We're going to do a short section basically on what our new strategy is and what we're going to be doing as campaigners. And then what we're going to be doing is covering all the things that you can do and how you can get involved. This probably is going to be about an hour and 15 minutes. We will have time for Q&A. Do feel free to put your questions in the chat and we'll get through as many as we can. If we do struggle to get through to all the questions, we will do our best to keep an eye on any questions we haven't answered, and because you've registered, we should be able to be in touch. The main part of this, the main sort of idea of this is to launch what is a new form of our campaign, which is around restoring hope for climate in nature. And I'm sure many of us feel that this is more important than ever. But I want to start really by celebrating lots of familiar faces that are in this call, if this changes slides. So over 2025, for people who were part of this campaign already, about this time last year, we had our second reading of the Climate Nature Bill, a huge moment where we got lots of cross-party MPs demonstrating how much we need a joint-up plan for climate nature and how we need legislation. And although that was adjourned, we kept that momentum up thanks to all of your hard work. And it really was quite inspiring to see how much people were doing in constituencies. We had 650 open letters. That was one for every single constituency, totaling 75,000 signatures. So every single constituency sending a letter to government saying, we urgently need to look at this in a joint up way. We need this climate and nature bill drafted and supported by scientists. We had people meet over 200 MPs. This was a combination of the mass lobby in Parliament. Lots of people travel down to London for that. And also what we're going to be covering tonight is a lot of meetings happening in constituencies. And this has made a difference. We have started to see the government listening to the impact of all of these meetings and feeling the pressure. And the government went on to actually directly thank you, zero-hour campaigners, people who were pushing them, with Ed Miliband thanking zero-hour campaigners in Parliament as part of the first ever climate and nature statement. And that was directly thanks to the pressure of each and every one of you. And we will cover this a little bit later, but the climate nature statement was more than just a PR moment. It was the first chance for MPs to have this annual moment to actually basically ask questions and start to look at where the gaps are when it comes to climate and nature. So this is something we're going to keep leveraging, and we'll be speaking about things at the National Emergency Briefing and how important this moment is. And we got covered in lots of local and national press, and this is increasingly important with the political landscape we're in, is to keep this on the agenda and keep it at the top of that agenda. And we are seeing more and more MPs actually recognising the severity of the climate nature crisis because of the National Emergency Briefing, because of the climate nature statement, because of our work. And this is something we need more and more MPs to be working on. And yeah, the reason why I wanted to start on that is because that giving ourselves momentum, and that momentum is going to be more important than ever. The current political climate we're in is, it's probably people feel the same way that I do, frustrated and angry and frightened by what's going on. Particularly when we are seeing people like Kemi Badenoch rolling back Conservatives' once leadership on putting net zero into legislation. We're seeing the rise of the far right. We're seeing Reform calling for more oil and gas drilling. So this is can be a very terrifying moment. But this is why hope is more important than ever, which is a really big part of what we're going to be covering. Some of you may have seen this. This was in Carbon Brief. This is quite a depressing table, unfortunately. But for the first time, we're seeing new newspaper editorials actually more likely to be critical, calling for less action on climate than more. And this is completely the opposite of what the public actually want. Increasingly, there is polling done on people's beliefs on climate and the need for more climate action. And the vast majority of the British public continue to call for more climate action. But newspaper editorials increasingly are being contrarian and showing the opposite and highlighting that. So the importance of us demonstrating to MPs and to our local press that we do want more action is arguably more important than ever. And we, many of you will have seen about the climate and nature crisis through this national emergency briefing, which was held last year. And for those that didn't see it, it's really stark. It made clear that this is not just a crisis of ecosystems, but it's actually a crisis of every aspect of our life, from health, food security, defence, and the economy. And these expert briefings were really a stark warning that every single MP should be treating this as an emergency and having an emergency response. And this was even further made stark by the Joint Intelligence Committee report, which came out. It was delayed, and we've now seen some of that report, and it is saying that this is a national security threat. So this is just more and more reason for us to push this pressure to say, not just does your MP understand the risks, but what are they going to do? What are the steps they're going to do? Because action is where this really affects us all. And as I have already touched on, this is also to demonstrate the public want action. They don't just want them to make speeches and pledges. We actually need to see what in legislation is going to change. What is the emergency response? So we need hope more than ever. And hope is a word that's used a lot these days because of that exact reason. It's the counteraction to the despair that's on news stories. And something which some people don't like the word hope, and I can sort of understand why, because they think it's blind optimism. But when we talk about hope, we're talking about it in the complete opposite terms. Hope is a proactive choice. It's powered actually by the action. It's powered by communities coming together and the resilience that we can have together. It's about actually giving voice to all of our concerns. It's really about empowerment that we believe that a much better future is possible and that it is not inevitable the path that all these security threats and reports are saying. We have far more power than we think, and it all comes by coming together, which is a really big part of what the next stage of our campaign is going to be all about. So we need an emergency response, and we believe that emergency response includes the Climate and Nature Bill. For those that may be completely new to it, the Climate and Nature Bill is a science-led legislation that we have been championing. It's supported by over 190 MPs across political parties, and we have over 1,000 organizations, we have trade unions, we have faith leaders, we have a huge network of people saying not just they want more action, but we know what the action looks like. It's a bill that's already live, that we already have backing for. And the important thing is to get the government to listen to us, which is a really important step, but to actually start actioning these things into law and making this, not just a promise, but a legally binding commitment that all political parties work towards. We once had a much greater political consensus than we do now, and we really need to show that the public haven't changed their mind. The public's call for this just keeps getting stronger, and MPs need to catch up. And we believe that relationships with MPs are key. It's not just about criticising when things are bad, but it's about celebrating them when they do stand up and speak out on these issues. We believe that by coming together as community and constituents, we can actually get MPs, regardless of political party, to understand the constituency concerns, because it does affect every aspect of our life. It affects farmers, and it affects the NHS, it affects national security, and it affects the cost of living. So everything they're talking about, they're concerned about, is related to the Climate and Nature Bill. And the CAN bill, because it's ready to go, because we have all of these, this level of support, we have MPs who are very much engaged with us regularly on it. And the government have welcomed lots of aspects of what we've been campaigning on. The importance now is to how do we take that to the next step. And we know that political pressure can deliver. It can feel like we sometimes that you sort of firefighting with all of the news stories of climate denial or the US president pulling out of the Paris Agreement. But in the last year, we've actually been making lots of progress. And this starts from when we did that second reading. Now, the adjournment was disappointing, but what it showed was the government knew how much power we had, so much so they threatened a three-line whip to stop the bill progressing. So this is a demonstration that they know this has the power to move forward, and that has now turned into a relationship with ministers who are now engaging with us on the contents of that bill. One of the things was what I've talked about, this first ever Climate and Nature annual statement, which was delivered by Ed Miliband. And as I touched on earlier, he directly thanked you, Zero Hour campaigners, for pushing for more accountability, for more joint up thinking on climate and nature, recognizing we do need to go further and faster than ever. We have seen things that the UK is in the process of adding its name to the High Seas Treaty, protecting oceans globally. And we're seeing increasing amounts of recognition of the participation of individuals and cross-departmental work. And that's all thanks to every email you've sent, every flyer you've handed out, every MP meeting. And we are hearing directly from MPs. They are recognizing they're getting lots and lots of pressure from people about climate and nature, and we can give them the pathway for what they can do. And I'm going to pass on to Jamie in just a moment, but he'll probably touch on lots of these similar points. But what the big shift that we're doing is realizing that hope starts directly in your community. It starts with your neighbor, your friends, people that might be in your local sports club. And we know that when we come together and we get lots of constituents together and meet with MPs, they're much more likely to listen, recognizing that this is something that affects all aspects of our constituencies. And that also can translate into local media pressure, which all helps them realizing what is the actual priorities and what do I need to give an answer on, not just for party lines, but actually how am I going to action the things that they've brought up. And we're going to be touching on this in a moment, but the thing that I think we have a huge potential with is that Zero Hour has this huge coalition of local organizations, faith group, trade unions, that we are not just here as constituents. We can actually create local networks which can demonstrate that this affects all of our constituencies, and we all have the power to move our MP slightly closer to changing the law. But I'm going to stop there and pass on to my colleague Jamie, who will be discussing what this means, what does this look like in terms of the actions that you can take.
Thank you, Alan, for that really inspiring presentation. At a time when everything seems so dark, I think it's true what you said, that it's really vital that we pull together and find the light. And I think it's also important to remember that hope is a verb as well as a noun. And that's what I'm going to be focusing on in this section. What can we do? What can we do as campaigners, citizens and constituents to ensure that our MPs, and by extension the government, deliver the emergency response that we all need to see? If you watched the National Emergency Briefing, I'm sure lots of you on this call already have, and if you saw the National Security Report that came out last week, you'll know how urgent the situation is. This really is now an existential threat, and it's one that's on a very short time scale, one that affects all of us for certain. And the truth is, when there's an emergency, someone needs to be the person who shouts fire and who dials 999. And that really is what our job is going to be this spring. We need to be shouting fire in our constituencies and in our local communities through February and March this year, ahead of the National Emergency Briefing film being available to screen locally in April. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. So There's 4 steps that I'm going to talk through. I'm going to go through these in more detail in just a second, but just to run through what I'm going to be talking about. So the first step we're going to be asking people to do is to sign up themselves and get as many people as possible to sign up for our specific national emergency briefing action that we're going to be doing this spring. Doing that will allow us to connect you with other local campaigners. We're going to be doing that largely via WhatsApp. Alan talked about how incredibly powerful local networks and coalitions are, and that really is what we've discovered through all our years of campaigning, is that those coalitions and those networks are how we can really affect change at a constituency level. Once we've done this and kind of linked people up together, we're going to be asking you to ask your MPs for a meeting in the constituency alongside your fellow campaigners. That's really going to be focused around the national emergency briefing, pushing your MPs to engage with it and to feed back to constituents about the danger to the constituency and what their response is going to be. And then the fourth thing we're going to be doing, this will be in April when the film of the briefing is ready to go. We're going to be asking you and supporting you to set up constituency screenings of what's going to be called the People's Emergency Briefing, which is a 45-minute version of the briefing that happened in Westminster. And we're going to be inviting you're going to be inviting your MP, councillors, local press, fellow local residents to attend it. So I'm going to talk through these in a little bit more detail. So the first step is really around connecting you to other campaigners in your constituency. And on the next slide, I think we should have a little graphic that will show how to do that. So we're really aware that constituency pressure works when groups of local residents get together to call for action from their MP. And our new join page is a really simple way for you to build support in your area and link up with others. So there we go. You can see this is live on our website now. You can jump on it. Someone's going to pop the link in the chat, hopefully, which is action.zerohour.uk/NE briefing. And that will take you to the page where you can sign up, add your name to be part of this spring. This join tool will ensure that whoever fills in the form gets teamed up with other local campaigners in their area. And this is really key for us because we're really trying to build this constituency pressure. So not just one person getting in touch with their MPs, but groups of local residents in each constituency. We're going to be using our local mailing lists. So Zero Hour has really big mailing lists of campaigners in each constituency, which we can reach out to let them know about this. And we'll also be reaching out to our local allies in each constituency. So lots of the work we've been doing over the last few years of kind of raising awareness about the CAN bill, raising awareness about the need for climate and nature action. This is really coming to fruition here. So we're going to be linking everyone up in constituency coalitions, and you're really welcome to share this join page with other people in your constituency and beyond. It funnels everyone by postcard to the right constituency, so it's great. And we're also really happy for you to be sharing this with other local allies. We're not asking you to build a specific zero-hour group in your constituency. We know there isn't time and nobody has the capacity to be doing this. And we've actually found that these coalitions work really well when there are representatives from different groups. So we've seen, really successful groups where there are CAN bill campaigners alongside Friends of the Earth campaigners and Greenpeace campaigners and members of local church eco groups and members of local businesses. So that sustained pressure from across all aspects of civil society really works really well. So that form is the great way to start building your local network. The link's in the chat, so please do you can fill it in. It takes about 20 seconds. Fill it in while you're on this call, and that will instantly get us to signing you up on a constituency level to link you up with other people to work with. And then once you've done that, you can do this evening as well. We're asking you to write to your MP. Now, screenings of the People's Emergency Briefing aren't going to be available until early April. And in the meantime, we think there's a real window here to engage with MPs ahead of its release. So we're asking everyone, write to your MP and request a constituency meeting specifically to discuss the National Emergency Briefing itself. And our aim is to ensure that every one of these MP meetings will have at least 5 local people attending it. And that's why we're asking you to fill in that previous form to link you up with other people. Now, don't feel that, maybe someone else will request an MP meeting and I don't need to. We've actually seen that MPs respond best of all when they have lots of requests for a meeting like this from constituents. During the autumn, we ran lots of MP meetings just around the climate and nature crisis, asking people to link up in their constituency and meet their MP. And we found that, quite often maybe 20 people emailed their MP in the constituency and said, I want a meeting to discuss. And MPs' offices started grouping people together themselves as well to say, okay, we've set one date and you can all come along to this meeting. So it's a really effective way for your MP to feel as though they have to respond to this request for a meeting. They can't say, no, we're going to prioritize other surgery matters. When lots of people in the constituency are asking for a meeting, they realize that they have to respond. So you can do that tonight. Someone's going to pop the link in the chat, which is action.zerohour.uk/meeting. And you can actually fill out the tool now. It will send an email to your MP around the national emergency briefing, asking them for a constituency meeting. And we're really keen on this because this ensures that your MP knows about the national emergency briefing, watches the videos from the national emergency briefing, and really engages with it, which I think is really key. So we're expecting these MP meetings to be happening through February and March, which would mean that the national emergency briefing is on MPs' radars ahead of the April release of the short version of the briefing that we can put on the screenings. So Alan's already touched on this, but I'm going to go over this a little bit as well. Why exactly should you want to meet your MP? What is the benefit of doing this? Well, as I mentioned, this autumn we've been running scores of constituency group meetings in constituencies across the UK, and we found that these group meetings are really, really effective. Feedback was that they have a really positive impact for campaigners. Meeting your MP gives you direct access to power. You're actually meeting the person who has the power to change things and advocate for change at a parliamentary level. And it also builds a relationship that can be leveraged moving forwards. So MPs, it turns out, really like these meetings. They like meeting groups of constituents from across their local area. Partly that's because it gives them a lot of bang for their buck. Instead of just meeting one constituent, they're meeting maybe 20 or 30 or 5 or 6, whatever it might be. And they know that those people are highly connected within their constituency. So the information that the MP gives them about what they're doing, about what they're trying to do, gets disseminated through those local networks. So they know that by talking to one active campaigner, they probably ended up talking to 60 people, as a result. So MPs really like this. We're seeing some of those constituency groups from the autumn are already on their second or third MP meeting, with their MP. They're really some of the ones where MPs really engaged. They really are kind of taking it forward as a dialogue with their constituents on this issue. So really useful way of getting direct access yourself as a constituent into Westminster and being able to nudge the agenda along in the way that we need it to. In terms of why MPs matter, well, MPs are the only ones who can make the changes that we need to see at scale to deliver a national emergency response to this crisis. So by going directly to your MP in this way, we really are putting the pressure on at the place where it most needs to be put. And to help you make sure that your MP meeting is effective, what we'll be doing behind the scenes here at 0 Hour in advance, once you've got your MP meeting set up, let us know, and we will supply you with our parliamentary team. We'll supply you with bespoke asks for your MP based on their party, their role, their interest and voting record. We're going to be using all our Westminster insider knowledge to help you with that. And we'll also be ensuring that every group who's meeting their MP has a briefing pack specific for that MP with lots of intel in it on the MP and also the local area, as well as a national emergency briefing summary for policymakers and campaigners. And one of the things we've realised is the national emergency briefing is huge. 10 different experts talking about a range of issues. So we have a document which I think someone's going to share in the chat, which it's actually just condensed all of that down into some really bite-sized key points and links to each of the videos. So something really useful for you and for your MP to kind of get to grips with, to give them an overview of the entirety of that briefing. And ahead of your MP meeting, our grassroots team, which is myself and Alan and others, will be supporting you via WhatsApp. So we will be giving you all the help you need. We can set up some bespoke Zooms with you to ensure that you feel really confident going into that MP meeting about what you're asking, what the best strategy is, and help you draw up an agenda to make sure that you exert the most pressure possible when you meet your MP. And in terms of the aims of these meetings, Well, the aims of these meetings are going to be to directly ask your MP what their response to the national emergency briefing is. And I think this is crucial. It's brilliant to be able to show the briefing and talk to people about it, but we really need to know, well, what is the outcome? Once you realize what a stark existential threat this is, what are our MPs going to do about it? And this really is a brilliant way for groups of constituents to ask their MP directly for them to respond to the scale and severity of the crisis. Alongside that, you'll be asking your MP to outline to you what are the risks to your constituency. I mean, we have there may be some people on this call, but I know we have lots of campaigners in the southwest, people in Cornwall and Devon who've just been repeatedly hit this year by storms. The lack of a response for them locally and nationally is something that's obviously really focusing minds. And this, what the briefing made clear is that this is a threat for all of us, no matter where you are in the UK. This is a national security issue and something that will, as Alan said, will affect all of us in every aspect of our lives. So we'll be asking your MPs what exactly are the risks for our community, and getting them to convey to fellow residents what the scale of risk is, in order to kind of galvanize more people locally to take action. We'll be locking your MP into attending the screening of the National Emergency Briefing in April when that's available. And we'll also be asking them to commit to regular meetings with you. As I said, MPs have been really keen to actually continue this dialogue with constituency groups moving forwards. So it's a really great way to ensure not only did you meet your MP once and they say, yes, I'm concerned about this issue too, and I'll raise it in Parliament, you can go back again and say, well, what did you actually do? What have you achieved since we last met? What other things do we need to be paying attention to? If your MP is someone who is really keen on dealing with the urgency of the situation, we'll be strongly encouraging them to join the new Climate and Nature Crisis Caucus in Parliament, which is a cross-party group of MPs who are really pushing for the crisis to be taken seriously and for the action to match the scale and urgency of the crisis. And last but not least, we'll be asking your MP to join the call for a televised national broadcast around the national emergency briefing to explain to everyone in the UK why this issue just cannot be ignored. So we're expecting these meetings to be really fruitful, and also to pave the way for the next step, which is to organise a screening in your constituency of the briefing film. So we're expecting the film to be available in early April. The National Emergency Briefing team is currently still working on putting it all together. It's going to be called the People's Emergency Briefing. It's a 45-minute version of that 2-hour plus briefing that happened in Westminster. Snippets from all the experts talking, some vox pops with some of the VIPs who were in the audience, and some of the scientists themselves. It sounds like it's going to be a very slick 45-minute hard-hitting documentary about why this matters. Now, if you're thinking, well, I'd like to do something before April, you do have that option. Obviously, all of the National Emergency Briefing videos are on their website. They're 10 minutes or so long each, so it's very possible to put on a screening in your constituency, pick out 3 or maybe 4 of the videos that you think really would be impactful in your particular constituency, and have a screening that way. That's a kind of more DIY version of it, but it's completely up to you which one of those 2 you do. Whichever version of the screening you do, we're going to be encouraging you to invite your MP, who hopefully you'll have already met by this point, local councillors from all parties, local press and other local residents, and we'll be providing resources to help you with invitations and raising awareness about it. After the film is screened, we're really encouraging people to think about having some kind of Q&A session afterwards. Obviously, the briefing is very stark. I think a lot of people who maybe aren't in the climate and nature crisis bubble may be very shocked by what they discover if they're coming into this fresh. We think that's a really good reason to kind of have some dialogue after the film. If your MP is there, it's a really great opportunity for constituents to again directly speak to power by asking them what they're going to do about it. Alternatively, you could think about, if you have facilitators, you could think about something like a People's Assembly or just a group discussion after the film. In the event that your MP doesn't attend, do not despair, because I think actually there's a really good avenue, and we will help you do this, to put pressure on them through not attending, as it were. So this is, this film is going to show quite how existential this threat is to our constituency, that our MP doesn't attend. Not a great look. So we can really help you with press releases and with letters to the local press, to really try and put some pressure on the MP to get them to engage. Particularly around the briefing and the Joint Intelligence Committee report, how much of a national security threat this is. No MP wants to be cast in the light of ignoring a national security threat. And I think that this is the real key in terms of these MP meetings and this screening, is that the bottom line is our communities, no matter which community constituency you're in the UK, all of our communities are in danger as a result of this. This is what the briefing made really, really clear. And we need our MPs to step up and respond to this, and to really keep us safe. Us, our families, our businesses, our local communities, our homes, our livelihoods. And that's really what we're going to be pushing. So that's our plan from February to April, May. There's a lot of info there. Just as a recap, right now you can start building these local coalitions and setting up your MP meetings. Use the tool that we shared tonight, the Join tool, and use the Right to MP tool that we shared as well, and you can get cracking. You can instantly get started. In February, March, we're hoping to see those meetings happening. And then in April, you'll be screening the film in your constituencies, and we'll be supporting you in terms of how to find venues, how to host the screening, and everything else. We're going to have another Zoom call specifically on that in February, which hopefully someone might pop the registration link in the chat for me. But if not, we'll follow up on the newsletter and you can get it there. And we really are hoping to see a massive response from MPs to all of this pressure nationwide. And MPs talk to each other, and one MP starts saying, well, my constituents are asking me about this, another MP saying, my constituents are also saying the same. That pressure really builds within Westminster, and this is how we get change. So the team here at 0 Hour will be with you every step of the way, so don't feel like you're going to be on your own. This really is about building these local coalitions and community groups to put pressure on. But the key takeaway that I want you to leave with this evening is, if you're thinking about screening the National Emergency Briefing, we really need to ensure that not only do we screen it as a information exercise to raise awareness with local constituents, that we also use that briefing to get our MPs to respond. And that link between people power and making our MPs feel the pressure is what 0 Hour is all about. And that's really what we need to be doing this spring. So as I said, join up on the action page tonight. Send an email to your MP asking for a meeting. Our communities are counting on us to do this and to get this done. We are the people who need to dial 999 and call for action. And I really hope you'll join us this spring when we do that. So we have a web page as well. I realize I've given a whole load of information there, but we have a web page link which someone's going to pop in the chat for me, which is the National Emergency Plan, which will run through. You can recap everything that I've said there on that web page. And on that note, I'll hand back to Alan, and I think we're going to take some questions from the audience now. Alan?
Yeah, thanks so much, Jamie. And I think you've really hit that point home. The thing with these resources, we'll put at the end of this meeting the two most important ones, which is Join. Someone asked this in the chat already, but if you've already signed up as a supporter, filling in the form is still good for us, because you can say you're already subscribed to the newsletter, but it means you can add your phone number, and that just means that we can add you to local community WhatsApps, and you can be more connected to people. And the second thing we're asking people to do is to write their MP asking for the meeting, because if 15, 20 people in your constituency all ask for a meeting, the MP is much more likely to say, there's a lot of pressure here, I need to give some sort of response. And we've got lots of questions, which is really great. I'm going to try and cover some of them. I might not be able to answer all of them, but some of them are quite simple. Some of them might be more complicated, but we'll try. But keep popping them in the chat, and if we can't get through to them all, we will be in touch. One of them was about support. So speaking about, are there any Conservative MPs that support the bill? So this is a really important part of the way that we work. We are cross-party, so we do have Conservative MPs backing, including co-sponsoring the bill. And this is why and this sort of connects to another question, but someone was speaking about all parliamentary groups, and we do have something called the Climate and Nature Crisis Caucus, where we are the secretariat. So we are trying to bring together MPs from all political parties to have productive conversations across party lines about the shared importance of of action they can take, and potential barriers or concerns they have, and pulling on experience from one another. Because what we found in our experience, this is why the MP meetings are so key, is when you go in with the MP where they're at and you say, okay, the MP's main concern is farming, or it might be oil and gas jobs, or it might be the NHS, or it might be a housing crisis. They'll have all of their own interests, but we can work with the constituents, what you bring up as your concern. We can create briefings on what that MP concern is, and we can do an ask that just helps nudge them closer towards an emergency response. Because we know that going into a constituency with an MP who's voted against climate action and saying, will you call for the full bill in its entirety, we have to bring them on that journey. And something which I'm going to give a unplanned shout out, but an organization called Hope for the Future, many of you in this call will probably know about them, but really great because they teach people about building the rapport and a relationship with your MP. So it's how do you actually see your MP as human, saying how do you build up where their fears and concerns are, where yours are, and meet each other halfway. And Jamie touched on this in a brilliant point, which is where we've met MPs with groups of people, quite often the MP wants to meet that group again because they felt like it wasn't a hounding. It wasn't just turning up and shouting them out of the room. It was saying, we're concerned, we want to know what you're doing, and have you seen this report, and how are you going to respond to it? And sometimes they don't have the answer immediately, but that in a way can be helpful for us because it gives us intel to what does your MP know of the severity, what don't they know, what is coming from their political party, what is coming from misinformation in the news. So hopefully that's gonna bring some sort of solidarity, but that cross-party thing is really key. We had another question, which we've had quite a lot of questions about. When people talking about what's happening in Scotland, which is really good, about the tax on private jets, and that relates to another question which was about how does it apply to devolved nations. So I live in the north of Scotland, so this is something it's always moving, but a big part of it is to do with obviously our oil and gas licenses, which now banned new licenses, but we know from the Stop Rosebank campaign there is the ability to expand on existing licenses. So it pertains to oil and gas licenses. It also pertains to consumption emissions in flights. So everything that we import these consumption emissions are not currently included, and the same goes for international flights. So these sorts of international component to the bill is a really big part of this. But as many of you will know, if you're in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, there's various levels of devolved biodiversity elements. And the way that the bill would work is if it was to successfully pass, it would then ask for an alignment between what they're doing on a national front to make sure there is a four-nation strategy that's aligned into the science. So there is devolved and reserved aspects. Another question which we've never had, which is good, is can you invite more than one MP to your screening? So yes is the answer. If you feel like it's a really effective way of creating that dialogue, of streamlining it, if they're in the same party, there might be some MPs that don't want to do that because if they're in different political parties, because they may feel like they're going to get caught out or they'll become a bit of cross-fighting. But I think there's not any harm in it, particularly if you can streamline the MP's time. So as much as we can all recognize MPs are not acting with the urgency we need them to, We can also collectively probably see the humanity in our MP by being, they're getting hundreds of emails every day. Their staff is sitting through them to be like, how do we respond to all of these things? And Jamie touched on this, but the benefit and the thing we've heard from MPs is if you have a group meeting and you actually say you can answer 7, 10, 15 people's questions in one meeting instead of having 10 different people talking about their climate and nature plan in one surgery, it helps them. And it will also help each of you by being in a room with other people, because I'm sure you'll have been in a meeting, or you'll have been in a scenario before where an MP might try and essentially waffle you out of your real question by going into detail about something, or trying to divert attention. And if you're in a group of people, you're much more likely to be able to share experiences and knowledge and understanding of different aspects of how climate and nature affects the constituency. So it's a good thing of solidarity, really. But we did touch on this. We will provide briefings on MPs that will give you a way to focus these meetings. Yeah, so a good question of if we email our MP individually to request a meeting, how do you coordinate attending the same meeting? So that the easiest way to do that is through the WhatsApp group. So using the join page, that means that we can make sure that if there's a WhatsApp group in your constituency, we can add you to it, and you can essentially update other people the moment that happens. But if you happen not to be in that group for whatever reason, if you just email us and tell us, we can email everyone that's a supporter of the bill in your constituency and tell them this is the time and the place of that meeting. Because the difficulty of all of this, as you very technical, but it's like this whole, we need to be GDPR compliant, so we can't just add everyone to the WhatsApp group. They need to sort of say I'm willing to be added. But we can write an email to everyone that's in the newsletter and say, you've signed up to this newsletter, here is a link to a WhatsApp group that's about the MP meeting that's happening, and can you attend? Here's the time and the date. So there's the main ways WhatsApp, but we can do it other ways. But the most important thing is to let us know as soon as you get an email from your MP, whether it's about attending the meeting or it's generally about climate and nature and the bill. All of that helps us, because it helps inform basically our understanding of what individual MPs' barriers to supporting the bill is. And many of you in the call probably have experienced me and Jamie emailing about this, where if you ever get an email back and you think, is this a general party line? Why is this thing true? You can just lean on our team. We're more than happy to help. Essentially write supportive or debunking emails that help move that MP's understanding along. Because I'm sure many of you have been in the same situation I have, where you send an email and you get sort of a generic email that doesn't quite answer your question. And because we've supported lots of MPs, there's lots of techniques we have of trying to find a way of engaging them. And it goes back to the National Emergency Briefing, which is sometimes the best way to speak to them is directly in their particular interest. So if they have spoke in their constituency about housing or about health, it's about looking at it from that lens, saying, I understand you're really concerned about NHS waiting lists, but, can we talk about this study that spoke about heat street stress impact in the constituency? And making constituency focused is a given, but is really important, because they will give you a generic response to a nationwide issue. But if they can't give you a stock response to something, you say, this impact is affecting this local town that's near me, what are you doing to not only protect those people, but to prevent these things happening in the future? It's much harder to give a generic response to that, because you need to see the humanity of a constituent. We touched on the cross-party support. Let me just go through. I probably missed some questions. But do people want to? You can also put your hand up, and we can let you unmute if that is also helpful, if I've missed your question. Which of these right to links do we use? Yeah, so we have. If you go through our website, the key right to them is about getting this MP meeting. The reason we have two different right to them tools, and it's sort of done intentionally. The reason is because one of them is to basically get intel. Be like, if you maybe don't feel comfortable meeting your MP, but you just want to do a quick action, you can send them and say, here's the resources. How are you going to respond in the constituency? But the one about meeting your MP is most likely to reap the most results, because it means that you have an opportunity to have a back and forth dialogue with them. And quite a few people are speaking about councils, which is great. It's something very dear to me because I've worked with the climate nature bill and councils for a long time. If your MP is just not engaging at all, this is a really powerful way to move the dial forward, because we've got over 370 councils supporting the climate nature bill. We've got a ready-made motion. We can go in and speak to council groups, and we know what works and what doesn't with council motions, and the vast majority pass. And it's a way that gets in the local media, and that council often write a letter directly to the MP saying, will you follow the council's lead in calling for this? And it's a good way to show that it's not an individual constituent issue, but it's actually something shared by the wider area. Yeah. I'm going to click a button. Hopefully you'll be able to unmute Joni, if you can. I've clicked it. Hopefully it'll let you. Hi.
Super, thank you. Would you comment, please, Alan, on the fact that the CAN bill has been dramatically watered down? I noticed this as a comment in the chat. Which CAN bill are we pushing for? The serious one or the watered down one?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the CAN bill, the principles we started from remain the same. The language we use in it is basically how do we adapt to what the current science is. So for example, when lots of scientists were telling us about we are breach 1.5 is 1.5 away. So it's now trying to say, how do we align it to the international agreement so that the core aspect of the bill remains the same. The thing that we always have to do with the reintroduction of a bill is we obviously work with the MP that's going to introduce it, and they will have a choice on the individual language, but we have core red lines of how do we operate the bill. And the thing from the beginning was, how do we align international legislation to, how do we align international agreements to national legislation? How do we involve people through climate and nature assemblies? And those components remain the same. But yeah, you can see the full bill that's on our website. But it is the core components we started from in 2020 remain the same, and we rework language just essentially with how things move forward, or the language that the government are using to try and essentially have the same component, the same red lines, the science is still vitally integral to everything we do, but it's a way that we can speak in the same language the government are, so that they don't feel like this is misaligned with the existing statements they're making. But the key components is the most vital part of the way we do this, and we have over 1,200 supporting scientists. We have Nobel Prize winners who are coming in and supporting the bill. So the science behind the bill is something that we hold really, really close to our heart, and we've maintained that scientific expertise who did a huge letter signing. I don't know if we'll be able to get the link up, but maybe Rosie will be able to find it. But we did a letter hand-in with leading scientists from across the UK, and including people who presented at the National Emergency Briefing, people like Paul Behrens are supporting scientists of the bill. So we're very much aligned to what the National Emergency Briefing is saying and the experts that were on that panel. So hopefully that answers it. The language and the individual words change, but the core science remains the same.
You're muted, Ellen.
Good shout. So does 0 Hour set up the WhatsApp groups? Yes is the answer. We are trying to make this as seamless as possible for you. We realize that many of you are part of many different campaigns. So what we are doing is we have a general WhatsApp group, the WhatsApp community. Hopefully we can also share that link in the chat. This is a general one. We give announcements of key things that are happening, key announcements that are happening. But we also have individual constituency ones. Now, though this might take a couple of weeks just for us to, as we're getting the demand in, we just need to make sure that there is enough people to populate that group. But we will create the group when we have the people adding their name. And if you've signed up to say you're willing to be added, we'll just add you and introduce you to what's happening. So we'll take care of as much as possible. And someone else has also asked about basically what support that we can offer. Jamie's touched on some of this, but we do offer sort of specific MP briefings. So giving information on what's the MP voting record, whether they support the bill, what their portfolio might be, what key interests they might have, and also give them a little bit of a steer on what the individual asks might be in the constituency, because we recognise that some of you might be very lucky to have an MP that backs the bill, turns up at everything that we run, and speaks about the bill publicly. But if we know that, then we can make the ask something that keeps pushing that forward. So it might be, how do they use a question in Parliament, or how do they use a committee they're in, that type of thing. I'm just going to unmute you. I can see I've got a hand up. You should be able to unmute. Oh, there we go.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you. Can you hear us? Oh, it's unmuted again. Let's try again. It did unmute. Oh, there we go. Perfect.
Yeah, so the question is, Alan, I went to the Climate Emergency Centre's chat with Nick Aldridge, and he was saying the types of organisations you should try, not people in the green bubble. One of his examples was the Women's Institute, which you've got here, where we are in Sutton. The other one was the National Trust, which we don't have. Will there be anywhere on the website, or can you list other people now that we should try? I mean, like the Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah.
What kind of ones will have the most clout to get our MPs on board and not shifting, not wiggling?
Yeah, absolutely. So that we haven't really touched on this, but it is a sort of a key part of our website. Is a thing called the Constituency Action Page. Now, the Constituency Action Page, we have individual pages for every constituency, and we'll pop that in the chat. And it has every supporting organisation existing. That's the best way to start, is by saying the WI, this local council, whatever. It's a great way to say they already know the CAN bill's important, so they're very likely just to say, I'll send someone along, I'll join you. But the national, Nick's point is exactly right, and it's something, if you go, I'll try and be able to share this link, but we have a whole link of all of our supporters, and what you'll see in it is some of them are climate organizations, but some of them are sports clubs, some of them are faith groups, and these things that cross society are the real key places to look, because it's what the MP won't expect. The MP will meet about climate and nature, and he knows he's going to meet a local wildlife trust, and they are really important for the knowledge they have, but they might not be expecting grassroots football team to say, our pitch has been flooded 30% of the year, it costs us this much money for game cancellations, this is an issue around local sports, or we are we look at, we might be a care home, and this heating or of the building is costing us too much money. We need to actually look at how do we have energy independence in our communities, those types of things. So the best place to start is our website and supporters, but you can always think outside the bubble in terms of like who do you think has influence with someone who might not be climate and nature orientated, who might get the fact that it intersects with them. So sports clubs is a really good example, faith groups is another. And we have quite a lot of success with MPs engaging, realizing that this isn't a quote unquote nature eco meeting, it's a societal meeting that happens to intersect with climate in nature breakdown. So hopefully that helps. and we'll make sure we get some of these links in the chat. But yeah, really good question, because that coalition is essentially touches a really key point about why we think this will work. Is we don't think it will be like you're going to meet some people that are concerned. The more people we can meet from different areas of society makes the MP, it makes it click what the National Emergency Briefing said. It's like, this is a health emergency, it's a defence emergency, it's a sports emergency, it's them realising, oh, actually, everyone seems to be worried about this. So yeah, hopefully those resources help. I'm going to click a button here and hopefully Marilyn will be able to unmute.
Yeah, hi. I'm really sorry, you may have already said this, but I may have missed it. Can you just update me or us on the CAN bill and its passage? I mean, I know it's had a go, it's had a couple of goes. Last one was with Ros, I think. What's the plan for the future?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I might actually ask some of our team to come in, but I'll give you the summary and then they might want to add anything. But the summary is, we had the adjournment, which was in last January, and they automatically give you the next date. But the way the private member's bill ballot means is you basically get kicked to the end of the queue, which was what we were trying to pressure the government to do, was to prioritise it above other bills because of the urgency of it. We're now in a position where we're essentially still calling for them to give it time, because we're still in the same parliamentary session, so it's still, the bill is live. But parliamentary procedure means that they have to give it time for it to be able to go anywhere. Now, there is a chance that, in a reasonably high chance, that there will be a new session of Parliament, which means that this will time out. And the only way that a bill can jump from one session to the next is by being in the King's Speech, which the government have to actually say, we want this to be a priority. So the likelihood is we will have to reintroduce the bill to ensure that it gets time. But we are essentially using every opportunity now to basically have meetings with government and government departments to say, why isn't it being prioritised? And it's why we were really, really grateful for the National Emergency Briefing being held, because it's an exact reason why we can push for this, is we can say, you've just released a Joint Intelligence Committee report, says it's a national security threat. You've seen leading experts speaking about how it crosses every aspect of society. So it's a real good opportunity. This is why these MP meetings are so key, because it's a way to say, given that new bit of information, what's your steps now? You can't just say it's going to be timed out and we're going to stop talking about it. And the thing that's difficult is that government will always hold lots of cards close to their chest, but we have heard all these little signs that they get it, and they're starting to understand more and more that we are not going away, and also the issue is not going away. And some of these signs include Steve Reid, who's now in a different department, but when he was in DEFRA, Steve Reid was saying that he regretted that the bill didn't pass in January. So he wouldn't say that if he was like, we just have closed the door and we don't want to ever talk about it. And Ed Miliband directly thanking Zero Hour and the Climate Nature Bill campaign in the Climate Nature statement. He didn't need to do that, and he was doing it, I think, because he was basically saying, we are trying to do this joint up plan. The thing that we're obviously not aligned with them on is that we need them to recognise we need it to be law. We don't just need to have the debate. We actually need it to. We didn't just need last January. We need that January to progress into something that can hold them accountable. And that's more important than ever. And I'm going to make a sort of a perhaps strange point, but I think you'll understand why, which is the timing is more important than ever, not just because of the crisis, but because of politics. Because when there is a increasing political attack, whether it's from Kemi Badenoch or whether it's from Nigel Farage on the consensus on climate, there could be no better sign of leadership than the government to say, the latest science says we need to do more and protect communities, and we are going to step up and be a leader in this. If they bow and say, we're not going to talk about it because we don't want to be attacked on it, it will only play into the hands of people who reject it. And it will say, we can just keep rejecting it and you'll stop talking about it. We need that. This is a moment for them to demonstrate real leadership. And who knows what will happen with the future of the government and whether Keir Starmer will still be the Prime Minister. We don't know. We just have to work with the political climate. And on the bill's progress, our main thing is seeing every single moment as an opportunity. But the practicality means that we might have to reintroduce it because of it might just time out with the end of the session. But I don't know if James or Amy, if you want to come in and add anything, or if you thought I covered it. No.
Hi. Oh, hi. Yeah, no, James here. Yeah, I think you hit it on the head, Alan. I mean, and obviously we'll be coming back to people in due course as to our plans for the next ballot. Timings on that are not yet clear, but once we do have those, we'll be laying out plans for that. But yeah, you've captured it correctly, Alan. I think those are the main pathways through. And although in terms of parliamentary process, technically it's not currently live, we obviously know that this needs to be the case. The good thing is the leverage that you all helped create last year, the fact that the government did have their backs against the wall, hence why Miliband did make those commitments and concessions, is a real show of strength. So thank you and congrats again. But as we know from running private members' bill campaigns, we know that they don't always basically get through it the first time of asking anyway. So we should not lose heart. And given that last year was an immensely hard year for many reasons to get progress on this from the government, we should all be really pleased and proud of the progress that we did make at this point.
Yeah, thanks so much, James. Yeah, that's a really good thing to hold true to in this call, is that feeling of private members' bill ballots have passed, and often it is by being reintroduced and keeping the pressure up and building an understanding with the government on what you're trying to do. I'm just going to take a couple of questions that I'd missed before, and then I'll bring Ben and Gillian in. One of the questions was sort of about the coordination of screenings in different groups with the National Emergency Briefing. So that's coming a little bit down the line, but essentially we speak to many of our team are in the Climate Emergency Centre's chat. We also speak to the National Emergency Briefing team. So we are going to try and mobilise and provide as much resource as possible to get those screens happening, but we will absolutely be be coordinating and telling those groups when we know where there's momentum to make sure that different groups and constituencies are all joined up. It will be really key, and it's something that we spoke about towards the end of Jamie's presentation, but we'll be running a screening, an event on screenings, how to run a screening, which will be happening towards the end of February. That will give you much more detail on the practicalities of if you're choosing to use the screening to get your MP's attention. We'll be touching on how do you basically combine these two asks. So how do you use the screening to invite your MP and in front of constituents say, given what you just watched, will you do X, Y, and Z? Because everything, in our view, everything about the National Emergency Briefing has to be like, how is this delivering action, and how do we use this as a tool to hold government accountable? And this is a really key part of how do we do that, the screening. So we'll be running an event on that, and we'll be connecting people. The National Emergency Briefing is not, just to be clear, it's not our initiative. So we will be passing that information on to other groups, and we'll be helping support that. But we will not be the main sort of central link, but we will make sure that anything you do is passed on to other groups to make sure that they have a chance to be involved and support. So yeah, absolutely. I did see there was a few more questions. I did see one that I was, yes, about the, so it's Davina asked a very good question about what the aspects of the National Emergency Briefing. Covers lots of different themes, and the answer is a little bit complicated because it's not a bill that's trying to give specifics on all of those areas. And the reason why the Climate Nature Bill is about the overarching targets that will affect all of those areas and how you do prevention. And it does obviously touch on key aspects of how the bill will address all of those issues by delivering those targets, but it doesn't give specifics on the pathway to each of those individual issues, and that's intentional. The reason why is because we really want to make sure that there is public involvement, and these climate nature assemblies have a role in this, and how do we essentially create the framework of how do we deliver it at the outcomes, but the specifics of health or transport or nature loss, they are essentially things that we will hopefully address from the targets. But yeah, absolutely aligned with what they are raising the alarm bell on. And as I touched on, many of the experts involved, including ones that presented directly or involved in the Climate Nature Bill campaign, so very much understand the interconnection between what's been presented there. But it's one of those things where it would be naive for us to say the Climate Nature Bill is the only legislation that needs to be delivered, but it is absolutely a framework of how do we align to make sure that we're holding the government accountable for international agreements that we've signed up to and playing our role. And that's why you probably see, if for anyone that signed up to our newsletter, you see that we often do share lots of different campaigns, because we realize things that the Climate Nature Bill doesn't directly address, but we support the need for that thing to be addressed also. So we will often share campaigns around around water, around land, around Rosebank, and many other campaigns that we're very much supporting. And I do just want to emphasize something that for many of you in this call, it will be completely obvious, but I think it's really important to give it voice. Given the political climate we're in, collaboration and working together is a given. It's the only way we're going to work, not just with one another and constituencies, but across organizations, because so many people we all are trying to help in so many different campaigns, and we're bombarded with essentially how much is at stake. So recognizing the intersectional threats of what we're all facing, if we can pool resources together with other organizations, and we can try and basically maximize people's time and effectiveness of getting issues delivered in their constituency or nationwide, we absolutely will be. So it's why we're really, really proud of the coalition of organizations who back the bill, because it's a demonstration that even in all of their extremely busy and important work, they recognize that supporting one another is a really key part. And I don't know if there is anyone from this call from those organizations, but it's a massively important part of the way we work. Some people think that our organization's got loads of staff. We're a very small team, so the resources and support of other groups has been really key, and we'll absolutely be joint with them on these briefings, MP meetings, and all the next steps. I'm just trying to, there's lots of comments, so I'm just trying to make sure I've caught up. And there was some hands before, but they seem to have disappeared on my screen, but do put your hand up if I've missed anything. We've got a few more minutes for a couple of questions, and then we'll try and round up. Okay, I'm struggling to keep up with the chat, but yes, Gillian, do you want to come in? Yep, hopefully you'll be able to unmute now. Hi.
Hello. Sorry, I was just a question I put in the chat. I was just wondering if you'd had any ministerial comments on the national emergency briefing, and also if you knew anything about a COBRA meeting that I heard had happened last year on a similar subject. I just haven't really twigged any ministerial response at all yet on that.
Yeah, no, there hasn't been so obviously the COBRA meeting was related to this Joint Intelligence Report. I personally haven't seen a huge amount that a lot of the detail of that gets kept public, and it's private, and it's also why the full detail of that joint security Joint Intelligence Committee report, the security report, was 14 pages rather than the full thing, is because it's seen as a defense report. But I did see that Adrian Ramsey, the Green MP, did raise the importance of how they're going to address that and speak to the public about it. So this is something that we're very much keen and to get more engagement on. And a tool which we'll put in the chat. We've got a template for writing to your MP that directly references this report. So it's directly asking, in response to this, what is the threat to this community and what are you going to do about it? And they might not, as an individual MP, know that, but they can ask that question about what is being made public and what is the response. But we haven't heard something directly from our MP contacts about the context of those meetings, and likely it's because it's a COBRA meeting, so it will be seen as a security thing that they wouldn't share with us. But
okay, thanks. So just one thing that occurs to me there, that is that should we be asking people who've got MPs who aren't ministers, should they be asking their MPs to write to the relevant minister about the national emergency briefing? Because just to try and get a little bit of engagement from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have in that same tool, that same write to MP tool, the template we have, it directly speaks about the national emergency briefing and referencing what's in it. Because a question that came up earlier, which was the one I was trying to find, but it was generally along the lines of how do we find out who was there? Was my MP there? And we can definitely follow up with our team to find out if there's a list. But that's essentially what our template letter is trying to address, is saying whether they attended or not, it's vital that we send them it. So there's a paper trail to say, 15, 20, 100 people in your constituency sent you the reports and sent you the videos and said, how are you going to respond to it? Because at that point, it's very hard to say, oh, I didn't know this thing had happened. So yeah, absolutely. What your point is exactly right. We absolutely, all of these things is a way for us to either email them and get the response directly, or to ask for a meeting to discuss what was in that, to say, I want you to meet with me in the constituency to discuss this report and what you're going to do about it. Because the biggest challenge we have now with MP engagement is there's lots of people MPs are basically being told what they can and can't say. And the MP meeting, we just need to make sure that it's not telling the party line, but it's saying, in response to this information, what specifically are you doing? Not, this is what the government are going to do. You as my MP, what steps are you doing? Now that could be, I will raise it in this committee, I will write to the Secretary of State, I will meet with these people and get back to you. But we have to make sure that these MP meetings lead to them concretely saying, whether it's a small or a much bigger step, the action that they as an individual MP are taking. Because if we get 50, 100, 200 people, MPs who are saying, I will take one step closer to changing legislation on climate and nature, or addressing the contents of these reports, we'll be much, much closer than we are now. And essentially that's the ultimate goal. So absolutely, we should be raising those things with the MP. And a really good tactic tool is to ask them to speak to other MPs about it. To say, if you know about it and you're really concerned about it, will you tell me, will you speak to the neighbouring MP, or will you speak to these other MPs who might be in the area? So yeah, great point.
Ministers, Dana. Yeah, thanks.
Ben, I'll just, you should be able to unmute now.
Yeah, I think you've partially answered this question, Alan. By the way, it's absolutely fantastic. I think it's been raised by a few people about the sort of coordination from NEB. Now, NEB, apparently, I learned that NEB were the campaign is out through 8 sectors of the in the UK society. So that included things like national climate emergency. So, and the thing was, I first went on, like so other people might have gone on to the NEB site and then been directed onto WhatsApp groups that belong to NEC. So it gets a bit confusing because they've obviously been running with this a little bit. And now you've come along, and this has come along, and it's fantastic because it's very specifically, you've got all your expertise in terms of CAN and so forth. But the trouble is, I suppose it has been raised a little bit about the concerns about overlap. Because, for example, information is going into NEB using their forms. They're collecting data nationally. but it's not necessarily, I don't know whether or not it's been organized. The data that they hold is going to be collected and available on a sort of constituency basis, or because you're certainly using that model, but there's going to be other data sets that are being generated. Now, my concern is that NEB, in terms of their organizational central team, I would sort of say it would be great if they can ensure that they're able to utilize the information that they get to be shared out, to be used through agents acting as agents to be able to forward this, because we're going to have other people organizing in constituencies, but not necessarily as constituents or on a constituency basis, but asking our local MPs along. Question is, you're going to have duplication, and also that therefore means dissipation of energy, because it'd be great to get people bought into this. So obviously, I'd like to let people in NEC, the CEC network, know about this. Some people might sort of say, we'll still do it our own way. Thank you very much. But do you understand? I think that's been raised, that issue about duplication, and how is your data and your etc. cannot not be made of service to NNEB as a whole? Can they not sort of make a sort of decision that we're going to run with this one and use that data set, etc.? Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. It's a really good point. So it's this tricky moment where it's like everything's happening very organically, where everyone got buzzed up, and essentially we're very much talking with them, and we've been in lots of their mobilization calls, and we're seeing it as essentially it's on top of, it's an extra way, but the intel we get back, absolutely, what we need to do is find essentially, as not to be very boring, but like a GDPR data compliant way of doing it. So we need a data sharing agreement, which is like, how do we formalize that? But you're absolutely right. This is why we will be directly meeting regularly with the NEB team to basically be like, how can we, when we get this feedback on what's their response to this, what's their position, how do we feed that intel in? And the screenings, we are looking at it as is how are we supporting it? So it's basically when we get these groups going and we know, okay, these 16 constituencies are holding screenings, we will immediately be going into NEB saying, we've got these WhatsApp groups, we can amalgamate them, we can use one for one reason for MP meetings and one for another. But the specifics of how do we make it as streamlined as possible is mainly based on the idea that our main focus is the MP meetings, and their main focus is the screenings. And we do have crossover, and when we have crossover, is making sure we're both aware that those groups are happening. But it's a little bit, it's right now it's in that sort of messy stage where we just need to join.
Sure. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
But just to make sure that this is crystal clear, we absolutely want to work with them and absolutely don't want to make people feel stretched across two meetings, two different things. Absolutely want to make sure it's streamlined as possible.
But your model is, this is a fantastic, I think we must feel pretty fired up by what you've presented tonight. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm just we've got another chat here. You should be able to unmute. Hopefully.
Is it us again?
That's it. Yeah.
Right. So Alan, sorry, a different. Right. So I went to that. Can you see that page?
It's
on your.
You got to go lower. I can only see your hoodie at the moment.
Go there.
Just go there. Oh, okay.
Okay. Yes. Well, that's the join page. Yeah.
Join page. I joined, but then the tweet seems to be about the CAN bill, not the national emergency briefing. That I could tweet about it. Is that correct? As far as you know,
we can review it. We definitely have copy that we do have a focus that remains on the climate and nature bill. But if you think it would be really useful to have a specific one on the national emergency briefing, we can look at what that copy is, because these pages just went live, 2 hours ago. So I'd have to look what that copy is. But if we can do something that mentions both, that would be great, because the thing that we really want to make sure sits with people, particularly when we're sharing, is what does a national emergency response look like? And we believe a key component of this is changing the legislation to be up to date. And for people that join this call, we'll very likely be sending out particularly for anyone that's new, we'll be sending out a link to an introduction to the campaign, because it's really an important point to mention that the Climate Nature Bill, our existing legislation is really, really out of date. And even if MPs say we're going to do everything, that we don't actually have the parameters to actually say, is that align with what we said internationally? So I won't go into all of it, but the easiest way to say this is the Paris Agreement, what most people say is the gold standard for the world coming together. That's not in UK law. That there is nothing that says we have to deliver what's there. It says net zero will deliver that. But we know that net zero means you can keep doing emissions right the way up to 2040 and then cut them and be compliant. So we are saying you actually need to start looking at carbon budgets that actually look at how do you meet the obligation of restoring nature, for example. So yeah, absolutely, we can review that and make sure that it covers those two key aspects of the National Emergency Briefing that's mobilised so many people and what we believe to be the solution of the Climate and Nature Bill.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think we should maybe just get to the stage of wrapping up now. I realise we've been on the call for a long time. I'm going to give you a few next steps. The next steps is everyone that's registered for the call, whether they were able to attend or they weren't, will be sent a recording of this, the key resources, the key links for what we've spoke about, and also for a link for our next Zoom call, which will be happening towards the end of February. We also really welcome people to we will take a couple of weeks just to get everyone into the right WhatsApp groups, but do use the join link to make sure that we can able to connect you to people in your area. And yeah, we will absolutely, as an action point, have a follow-up with the climate emergency centres and the NEB team about how do we make sure that everywhere there's a group, everywhere there's momentum, that we can make sure our audiences come together. But thank you all for so much for joining, and it's been a long call, but I hope it's been useful. And I really do believe that in our constituencies we can help deliver change, and at least at the very little empower people to feel like they can make a difference by having a relationship with their MP. So thank you so much. And yeah, we will send the recording and everything around. If there is any questions we haven't got to, we'll be saving the chat, so we'll be able to be in touch afterwards. But thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your evening.